Thank you. Good evening. This Town of Adams Board of Selectmen meeting for Wednesday, February 21st, 2024 is now called to order. If you could all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
I think I had a look out the window. I think maybe Rick is on his way in.
Okay.
I saw somebody scurrying up the walkway.
Okay. We'll move through, and if it is Rick, he can join us. So,
Nope.
the item,
That was.
we do have on our agenda minutes for February 7th, 2024, but they were not ready by the time we had to put the meeting materials together, so I am asking the board to table this item.
I'll make a motion to table.
I have a motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Howard. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. That brings us to public comment. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak with the Board of Selectmen this evening? Okay. If you could please state your name and your address for the record.
Hi. I'm Erin Mucci from 37 Upton Street.
And Dave Bazillion from 9 Town View Lane.
We're here representing Pro Adams right now because we have our annual Thunderfest event coming up March 23rd. There are items on your agenda for our approval for participation and facility use. And I just wanted to let everyone know what's happening. As usual, it will be at the Adams Visitor Center, 12 to 5, March 23rd. Food, vendors, and music from the Honing Brothers and Greg Caproni. So it should be a great day. Hopefully it's drier than last year. We will have a rain date this year of Sunday. So we just wanted to let everyone know what's going on, and thank you for your continued support of Thunderfest every year.
And we just want to leave you with the official poster for the event, so thank you very much.
And
We
so
do appreciate the town's support, always.
So you did say the rain date to enact one would be Sunday, March 24th?
Yes, the next day.
We can keep that in mind when we make our motions for later to,
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else under public comment? Okay. Hearing none, we'll jump into old business. So the board had previously approved the minutes for the November 20th, 2023 meeting. This was a joint meeting with our colleagues in Cheshire and Savoy. The Cheshire Board of Selectmen did have revisions to the minutes, which were provided to everyone in your packets. It is on page 4, those revisions. There were a couple of additional paragraphs that were added. So I'm putting them before the board this evening to amend the November 20th, 23 meeting minutes as revised by our colleagues in Cheshire and as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by John. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Howard. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. So thank you. We'll move on to new business. And as Aaron and Dave mentioned, the first 3 items under new business on our agenda have to do with Thunderfest. The first item is the facility use request for the use of the Adams Visitor Center, including the lawn and the parking lot. And it is for March 23rd, which is a Saturday from 12 to 5 is the event with setup at 9 a.m. With a rain date of March 24th that would mirror the same hours. You'll see in your packet that the insurance information has been provided, and that they have indicated that they have hired a bathroom attendant to clean up after the event, which we appreciate. So we will take these one at a time, and we'll go with the facility use request first. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to allow the use of the visitor center facility for the Thunderfest, which is to be held March 23rd, 2024. And if the rain date is needed, or perhaps maybe a snow date, you never know. If it's postponed for March 24th, the use of it will begin at 9 a.m. for setup. And the event is to run from 12 to 5 with the use of the lawn, the parking lot, and the visitor center.
Great, thank you. I have a motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Howard. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. Next up for Thunderfest, we do have a one-day public entertainment license. This is to cover the live music that they mentioned that will be taking place on the 23rd. Again, with your motion, I would just ask that you have the entertainment license carry over to a rain date if we have to go that route. Let's hope not.
I'll make a motion to review and approve a one-day public entertainment license for Pro Adams for Thunderfest, Saturday, March 23rd, 2024, at the Adams Visitor Center from 12 to 5, and include the rain date of March 24th, 2024.
Okay, I have a motion by John. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Howard. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. And lastly, we have a one-day liquor license application from Bounty Fair, who is the vendor who's been chosen by Pro Adams to serve at Thunderfest for the event on March 23rd. And again, if you could include in your motion the rain date of March 24th, that would be wonderful.
I'll make the motion to approve the one-day liquor license application for Bounty Fair to serve at Thunderfest Saturday, March 23rd, 2024, at the Adams Visitor Center from 12 to 5 with a rain date of Sunday, March 24th, 2024.
I have a motion by John. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Howard. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in, oh, I'm sorry.
If they postpone it to Sunday, we need to submit a new application.
A rain date.
No, we included it in our motion, but because it's Sunday? I don't think so. Yeah. I think you were covered. We will just check if there's an additional form that needs to be filled out, but the motion as it is would cover you from our standpoint, but we can make sure that there's paperwork. Okay. All right, sorry. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous, so thank you. And it's my understanding that Thunderfest began in 2012,
Yes,
and we're still going strong in 2024, so
and we've never missed one.
that's true, even in COVID. It was virtual. So excellent, so thank you. All right, so that brings us to item D, review and approve resolution in support of paint stewardship legislation, and I believe Thomas Irwin is here with us. In the board's meeting materials, we do have Mr. Irwin's statement that he made to us a couple of weeks ago under public comment, talking about the paint stewardship bill, as well as a copy of the resolution that he is asking the Board of Selectmen to vote on this evening. And so I will let Mr. Irwin present.
Great, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss the paint stewardship legislation with you once again. As you know, my name is Tom Irwin, and I live in Dalton. And when I'm going to kind of review things just briefly to freshen everybody up. It's been a little while since we last touched on this. And then I'm going to open up for any questions you folks may have on the issue. And just reviewing quickly, it was while I was a member of the Waste Management and Recycling Committee, when we were faced with the same daunting task that all towns are faced with, this waste management crisis, that we stumbled across the paint stewardship option and thought it was a fantastic idea. Did some research to confirm our initial impressions by visiting New York, Connecticut, and Vermont. And the retailers and the residents there did indeed confirm that this thing went extremely well. So then I became an advocate for this law. You may recall that the need for this is the massive waste crisis facing the state, where we have 6 million tons of waste that are generated each year and only 3.2 million tons of fixed incineration capacity, leaving us with 2.8 million tons of trash that has to be landfilled, and given the minimal landfills in the state, that really means that we have to haul it out of state. That, of course, is expensive and increasingly so, as well as having a substantial carbon footprint. And we're looking to product stewardship in general and paint stewardship in the near term in particular as a means of addressing this problem. You may recall that paint stewardship is a program where people are able to return their unwanted paint any day that they wish, that a retail store or a transfer station is open and deposit it there at no cost. And the paint itself is actually then reprocessed. 80% of the latex can be reprocessed, sold for less than 50% of what it originally cost. And the oil-based paints can all be incinerated. Up to 20% of it can actually be reprocessed at this point. We hope for more in the future. You may recall, too, that the consumer's lift is going to be somewhere between 75 cents and $1 per gallon at the time of purchase, $1.75 for 5 gallons, somewhere in that vicinity. So just quite quickly going over the benefits, the first benefit and the key benefit, of course, is it's going to be something that the Adams residents are going to value. This is made clear by the fact that 95% of the folks attending the April 2023 Hazardous Household Waste Day signed a petition to encourage their legislators to become co-sponsors of this bill, which of course then suggests that 95% of the people in Adams with paint in their basements or garages would be, and I bet there are many of those, would be supporters of this bill. And of course, second, and near and dear to your hearts, is the fact that it's not going to cost you anything. In fact, it'll save Household Hazardous Waste Day money, freeing up RDP money to deal with other solid waste concerns. And of course, we touched on the fact that there are just a zillion bills, and that's why it hasn't passed previously. So that brings us down to why is it, or what is it that we need to do next? And the issue there is, well, although 28 representatives and 11 senators sponsored or co-sponsored this bill, this is not sufficient to actually compel the House Ways and Means Committee to view this legislation favorably, and it's going to rely on a number of communities, hopefully at least 40, passing resolutions such as you're considering this evening in order to show the priority that the Ways and Means Committee needs in order to act on this thing favorably. And so with that, I do ask you to strongly consider passing this resolution this evening to help support this important bill getting through the state's legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin. I'll open it up to the board for any questions that they might have.
Please.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Sure, John.
So you've indicated it's at no cost, but there's actually a cost to the consumer of up to $1 we will be paying extra to purchase a gallon of paint, right?
Correct.
And you mentioned that before, so there is cost to the consumer
Yep, but none at the time of discard.
at the time of discard, correct? I support this bill, but, yeah, that's probably as far as I'll go on that. I could say a few more things, but I support it.
Thank you.
And with us, thanks, and with us supporting this bill, we're just approving a resolution to support, and that's as far as this goes, correct?
Yeah,
So we're not going to take any action, it's going to be a state level law that's going to take effect if it does get approved.
Correct.
Okay. And
You're just making clear to the House Ways and Means and the Senate Ways and Means committees that you're in favor of this. So if they have any doubts, is there any priority out there that answers that question for them?
okay. And just from my education, who's going to control the additional cost to the gallons of paint? You said up to $1. Who's going to control that cost? The state controls the recycling costs for glass and
The way it is managed is that there is a nonprofit that's been established by the paint manufacturers, and that's called Paint Care. And the state goes and, actually Paint Care pays for an audit of their books per state, by state. And that audit is then reviewed by the DEP of Massachusetts, or of any other state in which that's law. And they make sure that they're operating as a nonprofit. If they are indeed if they're making money, then they reduce it. If they can show cause by probably over the course of a couple of years that they're losing money, then the price might be brought up a little bit. To allay your apprehensions, there might be a lot of volatility in that. In the state of Connecticut, the price has been 75 cents a gallon for over a decade.
I'm not sure if I understand the volatility of the amount, because you pay that when you purchase.
Correct.
At purchase, right? So
Then you're done.
if you go to Home Depot and you're going to purchase a gallon of paint, I'm going to pay an extra $1, right? Which is fine, but I'm not sure how Home Depot can they charge $1.50? Who controls that? Something.
That number is agreed on at the state level.
Okay, the state's going to make those decisions.
Correct.
Like to do with the bottle bill.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
You good?
Good?
Okay. Joe, I saw your hand.
Yes, I know you've been to other communities. I noticed Pittsfield just passed the resolution to go along with this. Out of how many communities have you visited?
Kind of lost count, probably well in excess of 35.
Okay, and has any community disagreed with you and not voted for the resolution?
No community that I have presented to has disagreed, but to give you a more complete answer, there are 2 still scratching their heads.
Okay. And I'd like to also say you articulate your message well. You're right to the point. You're good at what you say. Why do you think the tepidness with the Ways and Means Committee? Why do you think, because I believe strongly in this type of bill, anything we can do to reduce the waste stream and get oil-based paint off, out of our landfills or wherever they may go, the better. But why do you think Ways and Means is waiting to get this resolution with a number of interested parties? What do they see in it that might be a disadvantage?
It's not a disadvantage issue. It's a we ain't got much time issue.
Okay.
And so the deal is if there's not a lot of screaming and crying for this thing, then we're not going to pay attention to it because we got a plate full enough as it is.
Okay.
And we're just fighting to get on the plate so that they will take care of it. Because in the past 6 legislative sessions, there hasn't been sufficient demand. And obviously, it's the same old $2 to $3 million saved, and it's not enough. So we haven't been able to get a ticket to the party.
I got you. Okay, that's all I have, and thank you for all the work you're doing to get this out to the public. I think it's very important.
Thank you.
Yes, I don't have a question, I just want to extend my extreme support of this bill. It's a necessary step, and I think it's the beginning of a much bigger groundswell that we need, because roughly in our consumer culture, roughly 80% of everything we buy is consumed within 30 days. And that means that a lot of that's going straight back into landfill or into the atmosphere. So anything we can do to close the loop on product stewardship so that it's a full cycle returning and being reused is mandatory. And down the road, I can see we're going to be taking action on single-use plastics, which are drowning the oceans, jamming up the recycling equipment, because only 8% of plastics are recycled. And the rest is thrown in the oceans and in landfills. So I want to support you and thank you for your persistence in coming back until we do vote on this. You have my 100% support.
I appreciate that, and I share your passion, and I will be back with mattresses next time around.
Okay, thanks for the coming attractions.
Thank you. So, Tom, the list of those who have supported the resolution is dated January. Following tonight, would you be able to just give us an updated list? Because currently there's only 5 communities in Berkshire County who are listed, so it'd be nice to see all of our colleagues in the county.
Sure, I
Listed.
can give you a complete list, easy game.
That would be
How would you
great.
like that? Would you want me to send that to?
You can send it to Bree, and then she'll put it in our mailboxes.
Very good.
It's just a nice way to kind of close the loop, and
Sure.
it sounds like you'll have our town to add to that list after tonight, so.
Well, that'd be lovely.
But we haven't voted, so, but based on what I've heard. So just remind us, so I did look at the bill. It looks like it came out of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee mid-January and was reported favorably by the committee to House Ways and Means.
Correct.
But they have not set a date for a hearing at this time.
Correct. There won't be a public hearing on this. There was one when it was being considered by the Joint Environmental and Natural Resources Committee,
Back in 2023, I think. I
June
did.
14th.
Yep.
Right.
I did provide my colleagues just this evening, so they haven't had a chance to read it, and my apologies for that. It took me a little while to pull it up, but the testimony from Mass Municipal Association, which is our group of colleagues,
Correct.
so I did provide that testimony for them this evening as part of their materials. Okay, so then the resolution is just going off to House Ways and Means, and there's no follow-up that you need from our body.
Correct. If you send me a copy of it, it's going to go to House Ways and Means, then the House floor. If it passes the House floor, it goes to Senate Ways and Means, then to the Senate floor, and then to the governor. If it makes it to the Senate, I will make sure that your resolution is in front of the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, Senator Rodriguez, so that you get full consideration along with the others that will have passed that resolution. So I would love to have a copy of that.
Okay. So in our materials is a copy of the resolution that Mr. Irwin is asking us to support and to pass. Would someone like to read the resolution and make a motion?
May I make a comment?
Yeah?
The bottom paragraph, typically what people read as a motion for a resolution.
Okay. So if the board wants to skip over the reasons for the resolution, Mr. Irwin is saying that you can.
I'll go ahead and read it.
Great.
Now therefore, be it resolved that the Town of Adams Select Board urges the Massachusetts General Court and the leadership of both chambers to view the pending paint stewardship legislation favorably and take whatever actions are necessary to pass the paint stewardship bills into law, including voting favorably out of any and all committees. A paint stewardship law will begin relieving municipalities and consumers of ever-rising solid waste management costs, significantly reduce a toxic waste going into landfills, and decrease greenhouse gases generated by the paint industry by 4%. Pending paint stewardship legislation in the 2023 to 2024 legislative session includes bills H823, an act relative to paint recycling, S542, an act to establish safe paint stewardship, and S551, an act relative to paint recycling.
I have a motion by Howard. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Joe. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's signed. We can get that to Mr. Irwin, but we'll keep a copy for ourselves. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to item EJ.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. The topic for tonight is to discuss funding in order to move a component of the Greylock Glen Outdoor Center project forward. I'm going to ask Director Nguyen just to come up, and he'll give you all the nuts and bolts of it, but I'll set the context. In the design phase for the outdoor center, quite a long time ago now at this point, the building has always been designed to be a net zero building. That is, it consumes no more than what it actually produces. So in order to achieve those net zero goals, the building should have some level of photovoltaic solar power generation. Once the funding came through from the state, that funding was sufficient to allow us to put the four walls up, put the roof on, and build the building. But some of the ancillary components of the building, including the solar component, had never been fully fleshed out. And it was hard to predict when we were going to strike gold and get that funding. So over the past year and a half, a lot of work has been done in terms of what the best solar component for the outdoor center will look like. Structural engineers looked at the roof. We looked at those components. Long story short, it was settled to do solar carports on the property. Then at that point, the conversation turned to how will we afford to pay for that work? What came from that research was, in the solar world, is the partnership with a firm called Select. And what they offer is they come into the community and they will offer to put all the capital funds out for us. And with that ability, the town purchases the property, the power back. So what Mike is going to explain tonight is exactly what that means for us, and what will be asked of you this evening is essentially a decision as to proceed with this project and how to fund it. And Mike will explain that to you.
Thank you. Good evening. So as Town Administrator Green has outlined, we're at this stage where we're ready to move forward with providing the solar to the Greylock Glen project, and Select is a preferred vendor by the Commonwealth. We've been working with them to figure out next steps. And as Town Administrator Green alluded, under normal circumstances, Select would come in and they would fully capitalize the design, implementation, and eventually the operation. Because of a couple different timing issues, if we elect to go forward with that plan as outlined, they can't expend any capital funds until after the power purchase agreement and the lease are approved by a special council and then approved at town meeting, which will delay the construction, the design and the construction. If we do that, they notified us late last month that there's no way the solar carports are installed and available to us before the end of the calendar year. It would be delayed significantly beyond our anticipated opening. So Select came back to us and they said, if the town were to undertake the geotechnical testing necessary, they would accept our testing results, put us on their construction calendar before town meeting, and then after town meeting, they would have everything ready to go and they would be able to start right away. They estimate that the geotechnical testing costs are somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000, and they've actually already scheduled the testing for us, assuming that we agree to this plan. When we had that information, Town Administrator Green asked me and Ms. Season to look and try to find some sources of funding within the current operating budget. We did that primarily by working with my colleagues in community development. Unfortunately, none of those funds are available. They've either been expended, encumbered, or they're otherwise restricted. And so Town Administrator Green and other members of the staff have identified two potential funding sources that exist. They're discretionary. He has control over them, but he would prefer to have this discussion with you. So my request to him was that he allow me to use those discretionary funds to allow Select to move forward with this project, and we get the geotechnical testing done on the schedule established, so I don't have to cancel them.
And for clarification, those two potential sources of funding, as identified in your memo, are either the reserve fund or the building and facilities capital line.
That's
Is that correct?
We crunched a lot of numbers, and although the outdoor center project, and that's a topic for another time in terms of, that budget, et cetera, but there's a lot of moving parts to that. There's still some unknowns. The building isn't done yet. We really don't want to spend that $25,000 from that budget. The entire intent of this was to keep those capital costs in the private sector. So the two options that the board has, and you're also going to hear from Director Coughlin tonight about Hoosick Valley Coal and Grain, and then we'll have a very high-level overview about the budget. But the recommendations from Finance Director Wojcik and I are, at this point, this evening, I think, to focus on the capital reserve that was approved by town meeting last year. I have my book in front of me, and if you recall, we asked for town meeting to appropriate $160,000, and the language that was approved was the following: capital reserve. This request is for a capital reserve for the purposes of public building construction, maintenance, repairs, and engineering for existing and upcoming capital projects. We didn't really know at the time what that meant, but we knew that we wanted to start protecting in another way the reserve fund, which, to remind everybody, we have $175,000 budgeted every year for unforeseen emergency circumstances. That can be used for a variety of reasons. Everybody here knows that we've used them for a variety of reasons before. And in order to access those funds, the board has to approve it, the Finance Committee has to approve it, and then the Finance Director transfers those funds to the appropriate line item. In this situation, if we were to do that, keep in mind that effective July 1, that balance does not, the balance of the reserve fund goes into the stabilization account. So we can't look at this isolated, we have to look at this a little bit more contextually. So one of the reasons why we have that capital reserve is essentially for reasons such as this, and the reason you'll hear later with Hoosick Valley Coal and Grain. So $25,000 in the grand scheme of things, although I can't believe I'm actually saying this, in the grand scheme of things is not an extraordinarily large amount of money. That is the purpose for the capital reserve. We have only used the capital reserve once since last July, and that was for costs associated with the wastewater treatment plant. The balance is about $100,000, depending upon at what point we're doing our accounting for it. There's a bill in transit. So we have ample funds in there for it, and I would recommend, as would Crystal, and she's here if you want to ask her any questions, to make just the recommendation that we primarily use those funds for this and protect the reserve fund and leave it intact at 175. Now, mind you, we've already accessed the reserve fund this year for the wastewater, for Power Street. However, with that $525,000 in the supplemental budget that the governor and the general court was able to get us, we have that money, and we will talk about what we're going to do with that at a future meeting for you to decide. But one of the automatic decisions seems to be to put $20,000 back into the reserve fund, bringing it at 175, which will allow it, if we don't have to access it, into stabilization again, which is our goal and our financial target for the end of the year. So that would be our Finance Department recommendation, is to utilize $25,000 of the capital reserve.
Clarifying question. Director Nguyen has talked about between 15 and 20,000, and you're saying 25. So what we're looking at is a number. You're saying 25?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're building in a contingency?
Planning for the
Yes,
emergency.
and if it comes in at 15, the 10 stays and can be reappropriated for another purpose. If we use the reserve fund, it becomes a little bit more difficult to account for that money, because then that money has to come back in front and transfer back. It will always stay for that amount. So by using this fund, it makes the accounting, and I'm probably not articulating that well, Crystal, but it allows us more flexibility to be able to actually use the amount that we need right down to the penny, and then leave that balance for future appropriation. The other issue that I would just present to the board is, if you don't want to spend the money, if you don't feel as though you want to spend either pot of money, then we can wait and put that all onto Select. Just know that we'll eventually get the solar carports, but we won't physically get them until probably sometime late 25, Mike, is what we talked about?
Late 2025. And we won't be net zero when we open.
Which was the goal of the project. Questions? Go
So
ahead.
if I understand it, we have to do the geotechnical engineering first. That's going to do the soil samples to determine the feasibility and the structure necessary to support?
I'm not an engineer. Basically, they need to come in and find out what the geology is like to determine how far down they have to go
Okay, and that will
for the
ultimately
pilings.
determine the cost of their project,
Yes.
right? How much steel they're gonna have to use.
Yes.
And how deep they're gonna have to go. Okay, but they will bury those costs into the power purchase agreement.
Normally, they would bury all of these costs. It's just a question that they can't expend funds before approval at town meeting, and that will push us back on their construction calendar, and then
Okay.
we won't get done this year.
So is there, since we're gonna be footing that, Crystal, will there be a way for us to account for that in the power purchase agreement? Because when they sell the power back to us, we need to get a discounted rate because we've upfronted some of the money.
So it's not for Crystal, that's for me to, and Mike, when we
Okay.
negotiate the power purchase agreement, that is exactly what we would do. Because I want to say, don't hold me to this,
Right.
but I want to say their initial power purchase agreement was 13 cents a kilowatt, which isn't terrible. But if we're going to upfront $25,000, I want to find a formula to prorate that
Okay.
and drop that down.
And that
Be our-
will be part of the negotiation.
We'll attempt it. Yes.
That would be our position during the negotiation.
Sure, and if we have the data, then we can take that position. Okay.
So if the timing was right, the town would not have to pay these costs?
If all the timing worked out in a perfect world, Select would put these costs into the overall scope of the project.
Okay.
But there's an interesting accounting capital question, that if our cost of capital with Solic is, let's say, 20%, and we do it ourselves and our cost is 10%, then there's an advantage for us to do it, if that's the case. So Crystal, regarding the cost of the capital, is it more beneficial from a discounted cash flow that we fund it, or not?
Do you know the cost that Select would have in 2025 if they were to take it on? So without knowing exactly what the cost would be for Select if they were to take it on, it's hard to answer that question up front. I would leave it up.
We won't know any of that until the geotechnical testing is
Right.
done because it hasn't been designed.
Okay. Okay, but they're gonna have an assumed cost of capital when they calculate the power purchase agreement. And it would be good to know what that is, you know.
I'll
And we,
keep- When I get the designs and the specifications back, I'll keep an eye out for
Very
it,
good.
and then I'll discuss it with Chris.
thank you.
So we're going to put this money up, we're going to gain a year possibly, right? And we're going to open, as we have always anticipated, of being a net zero building, is what we're getting. And then after that, negotiations can happen to try to recoup some of these costs back to the town.
I'm not sure the cost would ever be recouped. I don't think that's a,
Offset potentially, not
Offset is a better word? Okay.
yes, yeah.
I see.
The power purchase, you will get eventually, once the geotech work is done, and there's a cost associated provided to Solec for building the carports, you know, and there might be additional costs with this entire project. We already added conduit to the project in order to accommodate the lines. I want to say that the electrical engineers are looking at the transformer load and the switchgear inside the building. So right out of the gate, there were plans to install both, you know, there's also vehicle chargers is another ancillary project that we're working on with this as well. So these are all moving targets, but the goal is you will get a contract that will show you exactly what the power purchase is, what the estimated kilowatts are, you know, for purchase, and what it costs them, I would assume, to build it in. The initial plan was to have the town fund all of it. And then the electricity would be generated out. In this situation, the nearest analogy I can give you is the East Road Solar Farm. Town didn't pay for any of that. The corporation received tax credits, et cetera, through incentive programs, but we buy the power at a discounted rate from that solar farm. It's the same scenario here.
And another way to look at it is Solec is the bank. They're gonna loan us, they're gonna put out the money for the capital cost, and they're gonna get paid back on our payments for the power we buy for them. So it's not a free lunch, but solar energy will be cheaper than buying it from the national grid, so. But they, as acting as a bank, are gonna charge us, in their calculation, a cost, an interest rate, cost of capital. And they won't tell us what it is, but by understanding the charge, the kilowatt hours, the dollars per kilowatt hour, we can figure it out and negotiate on that. But we need them because it's to avoid us having to make a capital outlay. So, and it's a positive thing.
Just one quick question before I let Joe has something to add, but how many carports did we estimate?
I'll have to look that up. I haven't seen the drawings on that yet.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks.
Joe, did you have anything?
Yeah, I have a few things. First of all, I was wondering, I think I read something, weren't there going to be solar panels on the building itself at one time?
That was the initial thought. The structural engineers ruled that as not feasible, not cost-effective. And then the architects had genuine concerns about placing those on the building.
Yeah.
Regarding sun reflection as well as aesthetic value. So the decision was made by the construction group to proceed with another alternative. And this is the one that came up. Donna used, in addition to Select, there was another solar consulting firm that she used in order to determine what was the best effective path for it.
Okay. Also, one thing I see is that the trend lines of our parking lots trend from north to south or south to north. And that isn't the best exposure for solar. Your southern exposure at all times gives you the best output for energy. Also, it depends also how many kilowatt hours, how much kilowatt you want to get out of your solar panels. So the more kilowatts you want from a solar panel, the more it's going to cost. So that would be something that will need to be addressed to make it net zero, to see how many kilowatts need to go into that building to make it a net zero building. Another thing too is that company, if they're given a chance to do it, they'll be able to get federal credits. I think right now they're at 30% for federal credits for solar. So that should defray a goodly amount of their costs. But carports, they give off better energy production, not by much, than solar panels on houses. I'm not sure the reasoning of it, but it's been proved out that way. Also, you're going to have to see, as was mentioned by someone, how many carports we'll need. Carports are good because they're low profile. You're able to clean them off to keep the panels clean. They help cars that are parked there so they don't get inundated with snow if they're up there during snow, rain. And plus UV doesn't come into the car, to heat it up and that type of thing. But there's a lot of things that need to be looked in there to make that really doable. And I totally agree that we've gone too far not to make this building net zero that we wanted to, because that makes that building special. But I think there needs to be a lot of study to see what's going to be needed to make that building that. So I don't think until we have that information in front of us that, we do have to do the study. So I think that's all we're really concentrating on tonight.
That's
right?
it. Your choice is at the end of the day, the choice is, two choices, very simple. Number one, if you'd like to see carports with the solar panels go in around the same time that the building opens by the end of calendar year 2024, then you need to find $25,000 to do it. Second choice, how do we pay for it?
Yep.
At the end of the day, they'll be there. They just won't be there in year one. So the decision, more than anything, isn't so much yes or no to it, it's when.
Yeah.
And we haven't made, I've said this before and I'm happy to say it again, each time a change order has come up, every time there's a fork in the road with this project, we've always chosen to maintain the integrity of the building, always chosen to make sure that we choose the higher standard. There's a cost associated with that. This is an expensive building, this is an expensive project, not for any reason other than it is what it is, not a bad thing. It's just expensive to do that. And if we had had more time, if how this building was funded through these bond bills was more thought out and planned out, we would have anticipated all of that. But at the end of the day, when the horse comes into the barn and says, here's your, $8 million, we weren't going to say no. So Donna has done a tremendous job. The construction team has done a job. Mike has participated now deeply in just his short time with us, and Eamon has pitched in to try to come up with ways to make sure that when the building is opened up, we get what we thought we were going to get. So really, that's what it comes down to. They'll be there. Question is when.
So the question now is to be funding the municipal reserve or the building facilities capital line items?
It is Crystal and I's recommendation that the $25,000 come out of the capital reserve line item.
Okay, that's a building facilities.
Capital line.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Capital item.
okay.
We're asking for up to $25,000. We won't spend $1 more of it. We'll come back if we have to. We're hoping not. That's why we're asking for 25. If it comes in at 15, which would be lovely, the 10,000 balance just stays in there, and we'll give you an update at some point. Oh, it's back in, and then we'll make a decision how to spend that more. We've only spent one item so far, and that's for wastewater. And that's for a portion of that capital refurbishment project over at the plant that wasn't part of the $7 million refurb project. So we had to find a source of funding for that. We chose that because that was right within the wheelhouse.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to say I really wish that energy would go to us. And it just appears to me that there seems to be so much type of funding in the federal, and particularly with the Healy administration. I mean, they're really into alternative energy, and I wish that we had the hindsight once we felt that we might not have the extra funds that were allotted through grants and that type of thing, that we could have got the word out a little bit quicker, because I think we would have maybe had a chance to do it. I can't say we would, but there's certainly a lot of funds put aside on the state level for solar and that type of thing.
Well, I think to a certain extent, and we kind of learned this with the EV chargers, we access them, but they're accessed through other vendors and programs. So you just mentioned the whole credit program for that. We don't see that, but the vendor does. But how does the vendor pass that on to us? They pay for the capital up front. So we see it. That's why, I'll be honest with you, this decision is difficult for me. I don't want to spend the money because I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't want to spend it. But for every reason that we've talked about, I also understand that argument too, and I want to see the building, completed in the way that we want it to. And having it net zero is important.
Yep, I
So
agree.
it's not a waste of money by any means. It's just a resource allocation decision. And we're going to have 2 more of them probably tonight. And I would also tell everybody, now they're at this point in construction, Mike and I may, and when Donna comes back too, we may be bringing other decisions like this in front of you, because now we have to get to crunch time. We might have some decisions to be made about the electric vehicle charging stations. We might have decisions to be made about how much stonework we do. We're making these decisions early on in the construction process, but now they're starting to firm up where we want your input in these to make these, because there's different ways that we can go. And it's important to get that input. So not bad problems to have. It's good. We're almost at the end of the line here, but it's a big project for us.
Yeah. Once again, 2 things that bother me quickly is the exposure isn't what I would say is the best with the configuration of the parking lots, and also the kilowatts. You've got to make sure, once again, I think I've mentioned this, that the kilowatts you're getting from these carports fit the footprint inside that building. And I was wondering, is any of this going to be used for the lights outside as far as the parking, where the parking lights will be and things?
I don't know.
Okay,
That's all part of the design process.
yep. Well, I definitely will probably have more to say in the future, but as it stands now, our vote right now is just to get the money appropriated for the study.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to make a motion as to which I guess, capital, either building facilities capital or municipal reserve. That's the decision before us this evening.
I'll make a motion to fund the geotechnical testing for the net zero solar panels and fund it out of the building facilities capital
Capital
reserve at a maximum of $25,000.
Okay, I have a motion by Howard. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by John. Any discussion?
Just for clarification, so everybody can understand, right now in our capital reserve fund, we have $160,000.
No, he mentioned the wastewater treatment.
100,000.
100,000, okay.
I think this is exactly what we intended when we created this account through town meeting, that these things come up, and there's one of those occasions, and it's progress. So
Well, I'm going to point out the strategy one more time so everybody does understand it, because Crystal and I live, eat, and breathe this. But thanks to our finance committee, we have 2 members here, actually. Our fiscal policies, about 2 years ago, was to start protecting the reserve fund against infrastructure needs, particularly with the public buildings, so that reserve fund would be used less and would go into stabilization to bring our stabilization account up. One of the tools in order to do that was to begin looking at our available free cash in our annual capital program to start allocating money towards facilities and buildings. We did that 2 years ago with 100,000. Last year we did 160. Last year's language was a little bit more broad, as John said, exactly for this purpose. So your choice tonight, by using this funds, protects the reserve fund of 175 that will benefit us by going into the stabilization account at the end of the fiscal year, of which we have over $1 million in right now. So that is our strategy. That's consistent with what our financial goals are, and it maximizes the resources that we have.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
4 weeks on the job and he's begging for money.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I'm just.
4 weeks.
All right. So that'll bring us to item F. It's a Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund application for the Quaker Meeting House, and I believe Director Coughlin's here.
So while Amy makes his way up, I'll set the stage for this one too. We have several public buildings in town inventory. I don't need to list them, we all know what they are. But 2 of them that have eluded Eamon and I quite a bit have been the Coal and Grain Tower, as well as Quaker Meeting House. Quaker Meeting House is really under the stewardship of the Historical Preservation Society and the Historical Commission. We've had a few items for the Quaker Meeting House over the last few years for a variety of different preservation work to it. It's not an easy building to work on. It's a historic building. Eamon has been looking for quite some time to find the right funding source for it, and he's here tonight to present that. But again, there is a cost associated with this grant as well that the board will also have to deliberate on tonight. All yours, Eamon.
So Community Development Department is hard at work on a grant application to the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund. This is a state-funded 50% reimbursable matching grant program for historic buildings. We are building off the work that was completed back in 2020, which generated a very detailed study looking at needs for the Quaker Meeting House building, construction, repair needs, things of that nature. What we hope to do with this grant application is translate that report into a set of construction documents and specifications that will then allow us to apply for other future grant funds needed for construction at the building. So, the study is great, but it's not actionable in terms of construction. So we need to go through this extra step to create a preservation plan, a set of construction documents for the building. We are requesting $15,000 through the Preservation Projects Fund. We've been talking a lot with the Historical Commission. They have indicated that the Historic Society is willing to contribute some funds towards this project. And so with approximately $5,000 from the Historic Society, $5,000 from the Community Development Department, as well as funds that have already been appropriated at town meeting, we believe we can create the match needed for the grant application. The grant is due, deadline to submit the application is mid-March. And as part of the application, we're required to submit certification of a vote by this select board, basically authorizing Jay to, our town administrator, to enter into a contract with the Historical Commission to receive the grant funding. Are there any questions so far?
I'd like to say, I had a talk with Aaron prior to the meeting, and the Susan B. Anthony Fund has $80,000 within the bank that was left over from our fundraising efforts because of COVID. The parade could not go on. So I don't know how we can secure those funds, but I'd like to maybe work with Aaron and some others to see if we could take $5,000 out of that fund and put it toward this, because I think it certainly is. Susan B. Anthony and the Quaker Meeting House and the museum go hand in hand, in my opinion. So I can't promise anything. I don't know who will have to approach past board members and get their thoughts, but I'm just throwing that out now.
I think I think that's easier than what you think, Joe, and I'm happy you brought it up, because we've been trying to figure out how to use those funds appropriately so. But when for the committee, if you recall, when it dissolved, it turned those funds over to the town of Adams under the jurisdiction of the select board and myself. So I think a motion tonight from the select board that it would like to access those funds is acceptable. Frankly, the funds should not still be in a private account. We've just been negligent transferring them over because we trust Aaron. But you can do that tonight. It is well within the purview of the select board to do that.
My question,
However, if I may, because I did ask town council about the funds, we would have to ask town council to, I believe he said he would have to reach out to the Attorney General's office to get clarification as to whether or not the funding could be used for these purposes, but needed a very clear explanation as to how we would be looking to use the funds. So if we were to make a motion, I think it would be including, having town council advocate on our behalf for those funds.
but I want to ask though, should this money go into the town coffer? I want it to be protected and not used as, extra money to pick when you want something. Because once the money gets in the town coffer, and it's right now, I wasn't sure, but Aaron told me that it's in a community bank and it's, under our jurisdiction. And there need to be, for me, before I would do that, a promise that that money just wouldn't be like a quote slush fund where, you pick out of it and you take a little money out and it would come from there. So that would be one of my stipulations for it, because we worked hard to get that money.
I think Eamon has an answer for you on how to go about protecting that money for the appropriate purposes.
I'd like to possibly try to reappropriate that fund towards some sort of historic preservation fund for the town, which would allow us to work on some of the, give us some financial flexibility around these projects for a period of time.
So I'd like to stop you there. So this has already been in conversation amongst everybody about that money and how it should be used?
No, it's been in conversation with myself and Eamon about it, and the finance director, appropriately so. I think what we would do is,
So,
yeah, appropriately so.
okay.
Finance director, community development director, and myself trying to figure out how to use funds that we have sitting there that are just sitting idle. We have historic buildings that, we have too many buildings and we have too many resources that we have to maintain and not enough money. That is a great way, upon your suggestion, to use it, and we've been thinking about this. So what we were thinking about doing, and this is why Ed was asked that question, is because we need to know if we can do this. And what we'd like to do is treat it like the Quaker Meeting House Trust, where that money sits in trust and it can only be appropriated by town meeting for historical purposes. We have a variety of historical things here. We have 2 statues, probably more if we thought that through more. We have the Quaker Meeting House, the Hoosick Valley Coal and Grain. There's a lot of that, but as you appropriately identified, that money was raised for a specific purpose. So we need to start this process carefully to do that, so.
So that's not part of this evening's agenda item, though, right? That's good information, but you have a request here, right? So what is the request to the Board of Selectmen?
The very simple action that's needed tonight, it's just a motion, you can see the recommended motion language at the bottom of the memorandum. It's just a motion to authorize Jay Green, Town Administrator, to enter into a contract with the Massachusetts Historical Commission.
Okay, so if we approve that, the board is not approving any funds at this point, right? Or any matches to any grants, or any transfer of any funding, but just to move the process along, right, to get where we want to get to.
Yes, we'll need to come to some sort of agreement about funding relatively quickly ahead of the grant deadline, just because I believe I need to submit basically a letter along with the grant application showing where match funding is coming from.
I think the way to look at it is if you vote for this tonight, you're at least agreeing to spend $15,000 in match. Where that money comes from, we can talk about at a future date.
And that would be included in the motion, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I got you.
Because our only other recommendation for the 5,000 that would be available now is that capital reserve. Same account you just used. That's the only other source.
Before I vote, what will the 3 sources of the match come from right now?
Go ahead, Eamon.
Historical Society, Community Development Engineering budget, and the,
Town meeting appropriation? That's what it says.
town meeting appropriation and, what's the name of the fund?
So there's,
Capital fund.
so $15,000, so we have to break down into buckets of 5. Historical Society, $5,000. We had appropriated, I think, at least $5,000 previously out of the Quaker Meeting Trust. We may have to go to town meeting to release that money and reappropriate it for this exact purpose. I don't recall what the exact language was of that, so we have to review that. So it'll be $5,000 from the Quaker Meeting House Trust, $5,000 from the Historical Society, and then $5,000 either from Joe's recommendation, if we're able to set that up appropriately, or the Reserve Capital Building Reserve Fund. Same account you just used for the carports.
So just curious, Eamon, that would equal 30,000, let's say, we go with this, we win the grant, that's $30,000. Do we have a study done that we could appropriate that funding to fix the Quaker Meeting House?
Well, what we'll need to do, if we're awarded the funding, we'll have to put out an RFP,
Right.
get a historic architect on board, and they'll create a set of
come
construction
back,
documents based
okay.
on that.
All right.
So I'll make a motion to authorize Jay Green, Town Administrator, to enter into a contract with the Massachusetts Historical Commission.
I have a motion by Howard. Do I have a second?
And that's for the purposes of the Quaker Meeting House renovation.
As a point of order to the chair, don't we need to, we don't need to appropriate any funding? The question I asked before, just, this will not provide any funding, right?
No.
But at some certain point, we will have to vote for the funding.
Yes.
The authorization is to apply for the grant
Okay.
to do a preservation plan and using $15,000 to match the 15,000.
So how do?
That's the authorization, is for Jade enter into that contract.
Right. So we need $15,000, and I apologize to everyone with their patience. So we need $15,000 to match this grant. I know where the $10,000 is coming from. There's $5,000 that we have to come up with. And if we go with the capital account, or if we go with Joe's generous thoughts there, or if we go with the capital account, we would have to vote that to be expended, right? Come on, no.
You don't. I could just spend it.
Okay.
That's the way the capital account is set up.
Exactly.
It's just, when you only have so much money and we have a lot of ways to spend it, I'd prefer to have that conversation here.
I understand. We talked about it because if a furnace goes down, you need to get it fixed. Instead of coming to us every time,
Yep.
so. Okay, I got it now. So he's got that authority, so. Thank you.
We'll be okay. I don't see any reason why we won't get the money.
I'd like to say that I'm not very confident now in my statement about giving the 5,000, knowing that there's been conversations at $80,000 amongst people that we worked awful hard to get. And to take it and bring it toward other things, that was for maintenance of the statue, for keeping it, from patina getting onto it and things like that. And I would like to rescind my offer right now until I know basically where that money is, because we worked long and hard to get that money.
So the money is in the account with Aaron Mucci.
Right.
There was a vote taken, and we'll find the language, by the Susan B. Anthony Group, that they would turn the money over to the town for certain purposes. Those certain purposes are no different than what it was raised for, which means we can't spend it for anything more than what it was raised for. So not a dime has been spent. I want to make that very clear.
Yeah, I
Not a dime has
understand
been
that, but
spent.
I don't remember taking that vote. Perhaps I wasn't at the meeting, but I tended to get to all of the meetings that I can remember or had. I don't remember.
And all that was discussed with Ed. What we discussed,
okay.
to be clear again, is we don't necessarily think that the Susan B. Anthony statue is going to cost $80,000, so that money is sitting there. And we had an innocent conversation about how to start protecting and investing in our historical resources. And Eamon, to his credit, said, don't we have money left over from the Susan B. Anthony statue? And myself, sitting at the table, said to him, yes, but it's restricted, which then prompted me to call the chairman of the select board and say, what's your recollection about those funds? And she said, let us ask Ed. And I said, you're right, I forgot. He sat on that committee. Ed happened to be in the building for another purpose. We then asked him, I don't recall if it was the same day or not. We asked him and he said, great suggestion. Same train of thought, Joe, except we just need to check with the AG's office, because exactly to your point, it was raised for a particular purpose. We were not going to spend any of it until we get authorization
I
to
didn't say
to
that.
do so.
I didn't insinuate that, but, that's something that, I don't know, perhaps other people that were on that board should have, been in on that conversation. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. So I have a motion from Howard to authorize the town administrator enter into contract with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Is there a second?
Second?
Second from John. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. I think item G is also yours, Director Coughlin.
So, a quick update on our coal and grain project. Construction's been ongoing since the fall of 2023.
Excuse me, next on the agenda item was update of storm water bylaw approval.
That's-
Oh, sorry, I was looking at
Yep.
So yeah, Donna, Susan, and I have been working on the stormwater bylaw. This is it's required by the town to adopt this as part of our inclusion in what's called the EPA's MS4 program. So basically, because we're part of the Pittsfield metropolitan area, we're beholden to certain regulations regarding stormwater. So in our urbanized area, our downtown area, we're required to do certain things like street cleaning on a yearly basis. We're also required to do catch basin cleaning, and over time, we're required to adopt regulations to prevent things called illicit discharges, basically, preventing people from dumping hazardous waste chemicals into our stormwater system. Additionally, we'll be required over time to make improvements to our stormwater collection system as well as our sewer system to eliminate any breaks or breaks in the line that make it less efficient. So as part of this, the town is required to adopt a stormwater bylaw. I believe Cheshire recently at their town meeting last year approved theirs. They're also part of the MS4 program as part of the Pittsfield metropolitan area. So Donna and I have discussed various ways to go about this. Many towns adopt this as a zoning bylaw. However, given the breadth that the stormwater bylaw covers, in that it covers land use as well as illicit discharge, we thought that perhaps adopting it as a general bylaw might be a more appropriate avenue. And so as a general bylaw, it would be adopted through the select board as opposed to the planning board adopting it, as happens with the zoning bylaw. So over the next few months, I'd like to workshop this bylaw with you, with the board members, and then we'll need to hold a public hearing prior to town meeting vote to approve it. So I don't have many details right now, but I just wanted to talk about kind of the broad process. I'm hoping that so next week at a planning board meeting, we will discuss this with the planning board. Donna and I also think that the planning board makes an ideal candidate to be the stormwater authority for the town. So as part of their other development review process through what's called site plan approval, they could work to approve any stormwater management needed for larger projects that are constructed in town. So I'm going to review the stormwater bylaw and that process with them next week, hopefully get their concurrence that they would be the stormwater authority, and then move into workshopping it with workshopping this bylaw with you, the select board. So I'm hoping that during the month of March, we could hold a workshop, and then perhaps the following month during April, hold a public hearing on the bylaw ahead of June town meeting. So no voter action needed, hopefully, but I just wanted to discuss that process with you.
Appreciate the update. Any questions for Director Coughlin?
Yeah.
Sure, Joe.
The MS4 program, this has been ongoing for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so I think we should act more promptly perhaps, because this has been something that's been out there for, I don't know, years now. To be in compliance.
Right, yeah, we are a little bit behind on adopting the bylaw, but we've made other progress on, a lot of the maintenance activities that DPW is required to conduct and such.
My big thing with this runoff stuff is that we have direct runoff right from our roads right into rivers. There's no catch basins. They just go in there, and I've always brought up the salt, so I've taken it on myself. I bought a meter for pH, and I've gone there after some snowstorms when salt was thrown on, and the pH isn't that good where it's entering into the rivers. And I have documentation of it because I think my voice has just totally been not listened to when it comes for that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to make it like a big thing, but, it's something that bothers me because it's just not right to throw that much salts into a river, an ecosystem. So.
Well, I will say over time, we are going to be, the requirements are there now. They're simply not being enforced on us or with us. But over time, perhaps in the next 2 to 3 years, we will need to do what's called outfall testing. So we have to do both dry weather and wet weather testing to see what contaminants are entering the Hoosic and our waterways. And then we'll be required to systematically, any outfall that shows, high levels of contamination, we'll be required to basically systematically look at it and see if there's, for instance, somebody dumping something in the river, or if there's, say, a broken sewer line that's causing sewage to discharge into an adjacent stormwater conveyance or things of that nature. So it's going to become more stringent over the next few years, and we're going to have to invest more in our stormwater system.
Okay, that's all I have.
Look forward to the workshop.
Yeah.
Anything?
Just a quick question. The catch basin it can only catch solid things, like salt, will it catch pollutants or just solid?
Yeah, catch basin, anything that's solid that sinks to the bottom is retained there. If it's
Salt-
dissolved in the water, if it's,
It'll go right through.
it's going to go right through.
Salt will
Yeah.
go right through. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item H is an update on the Hoosic Coal and Grain Park project. That's your,
Me again.
yeah, it's you again. Here's your coal and grain, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I was out of order there. I was,
You're okay.
Out of sequence. So a quick update on our Coal and Grain Park project. This is a project that's been ongoing at 1 Cook Street since last fall. Our contractor down there is Lennox-based. They're a local landscaping firm, DF Lane. They've been doing great work so far. The site has been cleared. Major earthwork has been completed. Additionally, they've installed a wildflower pollinator buffer adjacent to the flood wall on the site, and then some of the plantings have also been completed. Additionally, last year at town meeting, we appropriated some capital funds to demolish a small barn structure at the building, and through a change order, the contractor has completed that back in January or December, I believe. The project is funded with $411,532 through CDBG funds. When we bid out the project, the low bidder was DF Lane, obviously, with a bid price of $432,600. At the time, we assumed we could use what's called program income funds. Those are funds that we get through our housing rehabilitation program through the release of liens that people have on their homes as part of housing rehab. So we received $35,492 in program income funds. We assumed we could use those program income funds to make up the difference between our grant funding and the low bid price, which is $21,068. We told everyone under the sun that this was our plan to use these funds to address this funding gap. However, when we actually submitted the paperwork to our funding agency, EOHLC, they rejected our budget amendment to use these funds and have directed us to find other town funding. And actually, as part of our grant applications, we are required to submit what's called a program contingency plan. And as part of that contingency plan, we say we are going to use the reserve fund to address any project contingencies. When I discussed this with Donna Season, who's been, running a CDBG program for 20 years, she was flabbergasted that we couldn't use our funding this way. And it seems that this is a recent rule change that's affected the last 2 or 3 cycles of grants. So it was a big surprise and very disappointing that we're not allowed to use this funding, but we now need to address this funding gap in another way or through some other finding some other town funding to address the gap. Additionally, there are several potential change orders that we're looking at as part of the project. These include regrading the dog park area. Currently, the dog park area slopes fairly steeply towards a catch basin along the flood wall. We'd like to regrade the area to essentially make a flatter, more level surface that'll be nicer for visitors and just a level, more usable surface. Additionally, as part of that, I talked about the contractors recently demolished the small barn. So when they took down the barn, they left the existing foundation in place, but that foundation is basically a pit now. And it needs to be, the plan is to fill it in, create a level surface, and then also extend a planting bed along the retaining wall that's there against the Ashwiltacook Trail. And again, make just a nicer, flatter surface for people to use as opposed to a pit that's just kind of out there on the site right now. Additionally, our architect and engineer have discussed some changes we need to the wood chip surfacing that's on the site. So the dog park area as well as the children's playground area as part of the park design include a wood chip surface. They essentially changed or recommended that we change the design detail for that surfacing to make a deeper wood chip profile, and then also the use of a more engineered wood chip fiber, or what's it called, engineered wood fiber surfacing that'll make it's a nicer material, it's longer lasting, it doesn't rot as quickly. Additionally, it's finer, so it'll be easier for folks to walk on and use. It's just a nicer improvement to the project. So we're looking at those potential change orders. So in total, between the $21,000 that's needed just to address the funding gap in the project and the change orders, we think around $50,000 is needed to help complete the project. And in discussing with Jay, we're looking at using that capital fund to help address this funding gap.
You mentioned to help complete the project, so when you're speaking project, you're talking about the dog park, an area for children to play, whatever it may be, and is it to help get to finishing it, or is it finishing that part of the project, is what you're looking for the funding to do?
Well, the $21,000 is needed just to meet the contract price that we've agreed to with our contractor. So it's absolutely necessary that we approve that. The remaining change orders, they make it makes a much nicer end product for visitors down there. I could arrange a site visit for you all to see, but like I said, if we don't approve these change orders, we will have, the barn foundation, like I said, is basically just a big pit in the ground. It needs to be made level and filled with other material. And that's also, I think, just for basic kind of safety of anybody visiting down there. It's it's a little bit of a hazard.
Naive question, could our DPW do that?
I don't know, I suppose, possibly. But it would be a lot of effort and a disruption of, I guess, their
Okay, just put it out there.
their routine. There's a lot of material that's needed to address some of these regrading issues, so it would be a lot of work.
I guess that was a question for Jay.
I don't know.
Okay. When do we need to make a decision on this? Because this is an update that you're giving us.
I was hoping for a vote tonight to,
Oh,
On the 21?
okay.
at least on the 21. We can discuss the change orders.
Because on the agenda, it just says update on the, who's the call, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think you could do it tonight and wait 2 weeks. I don't think it's board's choice. It's up to the board.
On timing, to Howard's point, if we were to wait 2 weeks, is that okay? I think I misunderstood when we had our conversation about the agenda item, and I didn't include funding discussion and approval on the agenda, so it might be in our best interest to wait 2 weeks to actually take a vote.
Okay.
But does that impact the timing of the project?
No, I think, I don't think that'll slow things down too much.
Okay.
Also too, if a couple of board members would like to go out and take a little tour of the site and see these things, I'm happy to arrange that. It's kind of difficult to stand up here and try to describe them.
I'd like to take a visit.
So I can certainly arrange that. We could go tomorrow or whenever, really.
Okay.
Yeah, I've stopped in now and then when I'm around the area walking. I've gone in there, so I'm quite familiar with what you're alluding to.
Because when I approve funding, I want to ensure some of these projects have been going on for a long time, and prior to you even coming here. And I'd like to start to wrap up some of these if possible, and it does cost money to do that. So when we appropriate funding, I'm just asking for, how far are we going to get to completion of a section of an area to getting to the final completion of the project. And I know that we have the green elevator, if you want to call it that. We met on that. It was an extraordinary amount of money to have that redone and made safe and be part of this project. And the board left that meeting without a decision, I believe, very concerned at the time.
Yeah.
So now, when you're requesting funding, I'd like to see, in a walkthrough, I'm always up for that, So I can get a better idea and have a better understanding, is that you ask, when someone asks for funding, what's, and all of a sudden, not saying it's you, but then 6 months later, we want funding for this part, and we're on for years. It's just, we gotta finish these things or not do them. We make these decisions at this point. So,
Yeah,
that's all I'm asking, and a walkthrough would definitely help me.
In speaking with the contractor and the rest of the design team, we don't anticipate any other change orders.
Okay.
So this is really, these three change orders kind of help eliminate some major issues that were never able to be rectified during the design process. As a little more context for this, as part of the design package that was put together, there was never any grading plan done, and part of that was because there was an EPA-funded brownfields cleanup project, so it was assumed that that brownfields project was going to change the grades at the site quite significantly. And that cleanup that occurred on the site went dramatically longer than we anticipated, like a year beyond when we originally anticipated it would wrap up. So by the time the EPA project wrapped up, we had already been awarded the grant funds, and we were well behind in construction. And so, and then the cost to obtain survey for a grading plan, as well as basically readjust the design, was significant. It was well over 30 grand, and we couldn't accommodate it in the budget. So that's a little bit more backstory on it's why we encounter some of these issues. Some of these things could have been figured out if we had a longer run time, but once we received our CDBG funds, we were on their schedule for construction.
Understood.
Yeah, I'd like to quickly say too, I concur with John about some of these projects. They've just been going on, and I know there's insinuating circumstances that makes that happen, but I've found that that's been a trend somewhat well before Jay came, and that projects, they just go on, and it's like you never tie the shoe to finish it. So I concur wholeheartedly with John that, if we can put some of these to rest and then let the dust settle and see where we are financially before we entertain other, projects within the town. And because I'm quite sure by saying this, I remember that the late Jim Bush was the liaison for this, and Jim's been gone a while. And God bless him.
Yep. Okay.
So to end the discussion, for me at least, Evan doing a great job in bringing forward all these requests and working as a leader of of the department. So I appreciate the work that you do, and I think a walkthrough would again, last time I'll say it, but if you can set up a walkthrough, and then I can see exactly what the funding is going to go towards,
I'll send you an email tomorrow.
that'd be awesome.
Organize it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Copy me on
So-
that, please.
Okay.
Copy everybody, actually. Sure.
Yeah, so we will, at our March 6th meeting, we will have a funding discussion and approval, and you can provide us with an itemized list and their funding total, and a recommendation from Administrator Green and Director Wojcik as to where those sources would be. That would be great, and if you could follow up with the board, or for board to follow up with you to schedule walkthroughs, that would be fantastic. So, thank you.
Yeah, if anyone is available tomorrow morning, for instance, we could schedule it as early as then.
I can make another general comment. Dogs are very popular in Adams, and so I think the quality of this park is really important, because I think it's going to be very heavily used, and so it's got to be robust and handle.
Yeah, that's my concern. With the existing grades, I think basically one corner of the dog park is going to be almost unusable space. It'll be sort of like a cliff almost.
And we're going to be addressing that, right?
That's the point, is to try to address that and make this entire dog park area into a more level, usable surface for everybody.
Very good. Just looking at tomorrow's.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks. So that'll bring us to item I. It's a fiscal year 25 preliminary budget overview. Jay?
Just a very high-level overview for tonight. Crystal's here as well if you have any questions, but we've been, over the past month, really since the first week of January, been meeting with department heads, putting together a wish list, for lack of a better term, populating our capital wish list items for each department. We've given them only ask for what you really need to continue services. This is, as you may be hearing about other communities, we're no different. Our personnel costs this year are certainly driving our budget this year, the health insurance, et cetera. So we're on track, consistent with our schedule that we published a few weeks ago. We'll get the budget books well in time to be able to have, I know, see Madam Clerk is here. We'll make sure that we get the budget books out in time, so we have our town meeting for the first week of June. I think we'll have some challenging decisions to make. Crystal and I are already making them as we're building the budget. We know what we like. We've collected feedback throughout the year, things that we're not doing well enough, things where we need more resources, manpower, et cetera. And we've been trying different things. As a reminder, we do have to live within the confines of Proposition 2.5, so we can't just arbitrarily add whole amounts of money to the budget. We are limited by state law to do that, so we have to live within those confines. So that's what we've been doing. That's just a very high-level overview of it. I can tell you that the governor's first budget, H1, as well as the subsequent, has been good so far for us. We will always love to see more, but we have some great advocacy through the Mass Municipal Association for that. So those numbers are greater than what they were last year, and the school funding is looking really good. I don't want to steal the school committee or Superintendent Dean or Superintendent Brosnan's thunder, but certainly things that are happening at Boston, we wish they were moving faster, but we think they're moving in the right direction. You folks read the same news reports I do, so we're being conservative with this year's budget. We'll have some tough decisions to make, but that's not anything we haven't faced before. But we're continuing to be on track, and we'll keep you informed, and we'll get those budget books out to you as soon as we have a first pass that we feel comfortable being able to put into place and trim it from there.
And the budget books would be available, I believe at our March 6th meeting is what we talked about, which is 93 days before town meeting, which does keep us in compliance with the 90-day mark. Gives us a little bit of a buffer, but not much. And then from what was already posted, we would enter into our workshops on budget with all of the individual departments in April, giving people about a month with the budget books to look at the materials before they go into those workshops, which I think is a nice improvement over last year to give people a little bit more time with the materials. So thank you, both of you.
So the Board of Selectmen will receive the budget books, and we will have a workshop.
No, 4 of them.
We'll have 4 workshops on our own. No, how many by the Selectmen?
Go ahead, Christine, you have the schedule.
So I know
Yeah, I know I have it in the emails, but.
you do have this schedule. No, I don't think I brought mine. But I think that their first workshop was April 2nd, but on March 6th, you're going to go over the kind of the overview of the budget as part of the first part of the budget book. that overview. March 11th, the Finance Committee was meeting. That's their first meeting, and when they're going to get the budget books and go over that first part of the budget to just get that blanket overview. So those are two separate meetings, and then we'll come together and do joint meetings with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. I want to say, this is now from memory, so this could get scary, but April 2nd and April 4th, and then I think it was the 9th and the 11th.
Crystal says yes.
Yeah? It was the Tuesday, Thursday, in the first 2 weeks of April. Okay.
Same process we did last year.
Right, so we have a workshop as a Board of Selectmen, just us to have a frank discussion about the initial presentation of the budget.
It'll be at a meeting,
But,
a
exactly,
regular scheduling
regular
meeting
scheduled meeting with just the board.
on March
And the
6th.
Finance Committee has their own to do their
March
thing,
11th.
and then we come together after that.
You come together and do your individual reviews of the department.
Yep.
Get the department heads.
Yep.
Same process we've done the last couple of years. And then at the end of it, the board can deliberate and vote on the budget alone. And the Finance Committee will then get the recommendation from the Select Board, then deliberate and decide on their own to advance to town meeting.
Which I believe we scheduled our vote for the third Wednesday in April. I think it's on that agenda, if the workshops go well, to keep us on schedule for
Now,
May 1.
this happened last year, so I'm going to state it tonight so everybody knows and they can expect it happening again. Our capital program, where we spend one-time sources of funds on one-time expenditures, think DPW truck, police cruiser, what we talked about tonight. Historically, the town has, and we have not been able to change this yet for a variety of reasons I'm not going to get into tonight. Our free cash number funds our capital program. In order to determine how much we spend on capital, we need that free cash number. We can only get the free cash number once the Massachusetts Department of Revenue looks at all of the closed budgets, fiscal 23's budget, approves that number and gives it to us. Then we can begin talking about how we're going to spend it once we know exactly how much we have. So if you look at that sheet that you all have that lays out the budget workshops, that capital item sits in there with an asterisk that says we'll insert that when we get all those figures and be able to talk about a hard figure versus how we want to spend it. We know how we want to spend it. I can tell you right now, what we want to spend it on far exceeds how much we're going to have. But that's okay. That's how we prioritize. So just know that will happen separately within the budget process, but hasn't been scheduled yet because we don't know how much we have.
All right, thank you. Thanks. So we'll move on to subcommittee and liaison reports. Joe?
Yes, I attended a Parks Commission meeting, and the basic theme of it was just scheduling all the user groups for times and fields that they were going to use. And it was made known by one of the members that she will not be running for re-election this year. So her name, I don't even know if I ever knew her name, but she will not be running, so I'm sure she made it aware. Someone with a letter of letting her know that she won't run, so that leaves an opening. But going to those meetings, I really feel a sense that, we're really short on fields for users, and I bring that up every year. I don't have an answer to how to rectify that problem, but we certainly are short of fields. But what makes it good is that there's a real good consensus amongst users are using a particular field at a particular time. They're able to hash out times, and there seems to be no animosity toward any of the groups. That's the only meeting I attended.
Thanks, Joe. Howard?
Nothing for me.
Nothing from me. John?
All set?
Announcements under the order, Joe?
Yeah, I just have a few things. Today, I was hiking, and we came down the Gould Trail, and then we got onto the connector trail that leads back to the parking lot up on Gould Road. And within the confines of the connector trail, there's been some new signs put up, and they're by DCR, and they're laminated plastic signs, and they look like hell. They're on the trees with staples, and they're already, being blown off, and, that's right where the proposed, cabins are gonna be and things, and I don't know if there's been any conversation amongst town officials and DCR about that, but they look horrid. They're everywhere, they're just stapled on, and it looks like a sign, it looks just like a sign, I don't know, there's a sign here, a sign here, a sign there, and it's just, it doesn't really look good at all. That's all I'm saying. It's just distasteful. And the other thing I have to say is I ran into Art Babylon, and he presented the growers of Massachusetts brought forth their marijuana plants, and they were judged. I don't know the particular parameters, but out of 158 growers, his product was rated number 2 in the state. So that is good, because that allows him to, and he feels confident that he's doing good at what he's doing. So that's a business that's shown a lot of success, and a gentleman who's really put his heart and soul in this town. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Joe. Howard?
Just want to compliment the Community Development Department on all the projects they have going and their ability to start reaching completion with it. And I want to compliment Mike Wynn and for the Greylock Glen. That's, to get this far along and have things come up like this solar project without, which is very, very positive considering all the things that go wrong with these major construction projects. So I think the Community Development Department's to be commended for that. And the coal and grain, it was a brownfield, it was a disaster. And they got confronted with a brownfield process that took twice as long as it should have. And that we're presented with some extenuating costs, which are, I think, reasonable given the risks that the brownfield remediation presented. So I just want to acknowledge the amount of work that went into what's been done to date.
Thanks, Howard. I'm going to borrow your memo there, because I forgot one. Speaking of our Community Development Department, who is helping MOTA 420 with their community outreach meeting, which is scheduled for tomorrow, February 22nd, at the Adams Visitor Center at 6 p.m. So this is as part of their licensing. As part of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, they are required to hold a community outreach meeting, and so MOTA 420 is doing that tomorrow, February 22nd, at the Adams Visitor Center at 6 p.m. So thanks, and the information is on the website, but thank you for letting me borrow that from your mailbox.
No problem, you can hold it longer if you want.
No, I'm good. John?
Just one thing, I'm very pleased with the new apartments that were built on Park Street, across the street from us down. What's the name of that building again?
Jones Block?
The Jones Block, and they had 6 new apartments, I believe.
6.
And they have the school district at the bottom floor, and those 6 apartments were rented very quickly. And now there's a lot of excitement being generated on the East Street property that the town was in possession of for the youth center. And there's been some great improvements made over there, and I drove by to try to take a look at it. So soon apartments, brand new apartments will be available on the East Street site, which is an excellent site to have a residence in. So as we always do, we're going to work to get those filled also, but there's a great demand for people to live in our community. And as soon as we have these apartments completed, new apartments, not older ones, but newer ones that have been renovated, or we're finding out that a tremendous amount of inquiries that people want to live in this community. So as soon as we get them ready, they rent out. So it's a great sign for this community. So I'm very positive on that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, so I do have on the agenda an executive session, as we are entering into negotiations with the AFSCME Department of Public Works 2024-2027 contract. I do declare that talking about our negotiating position in open session would have a detrimental effect on our negotiating position, so I am asking the Board of Selectmen to go into executive session per open meeting law, MGL, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Reason Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, which I have. And this, again, would be for the purposes of discussing conditions with the AFSCME and Department of Public Works 2024 to 2027 contract.
So moved.
I have a motion by Howard. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by John. It is a roll call vote. Joe?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Christina's a yes. And John?
You made the motion, right?
Howard did?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. That's my
No,
short.
thank you for checking me. All right, so that does bring us into executive session. I would like to take a 5-minute recess to clear the room, bio break, or whatever anyone needs, and we'll get a copy of that. So thank you. So 5 minutes.